Ugh, what happened? Gotta get out of here. Not dying here!
Welcome, traveler. What brings you to our realm?
I seek an audience with your leader.
You stand before her. State your purpose.
I bring tidings of an approaching darkness.
Then we must speak. Awaken, vessel of power. By the crystals we summon thee.
What is this?
Embrace the energy.
It's overwhelming!
Rise!
The first thing I registered wasn't the crash. It was the silence that followed. One moment, my scout ship, the Odyssey, was tearing through the upper atmosphere of an uncharted planet, a violent blur of fire, screaming metal, and emergency alarms. The next, I was hanging upside down from my crash harness, blood dripping from a gash on my forehead onto a shattered view screen that showed nothing but static. My call sign is Jax Cordell, and I was the idiot who decided to investigate an anomalous energy signature instead of reporting it back to the fleet. The planet's gravity was slightly heavier than Earth's, pressing down on my ribs like a giant thumb. Every breath came with a metallic whisper. I fumbled for the manual release on my harness, dropped 2 meters onto a ceiling panel that had become the floor, and landed in a heap of bruised muscle and fractured pride. The air was breathable. My suit's sensors confirmed oxygen, nitrogen, and a faint trace of an unidentified gas that smelled like ozone and crushed lavender. That was my first mistake. Thinking the sweetness was harmless, I dragged myself through the twisted wreckage of the Odyssey's cockpit, grabbed my emergency kit, and pushed open the warped airlock. Outside, the world was a cathedral of alien biology. Trees with trunks like twisted glass rose over 100 meters, their leaves humming with a soft bioluminescence that pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves. The ground was carpeted in something like moss, but it was the color of dried blood, and every step I took sent tiny sparks of blue light skittering away from my boots. I had never seen anything so beautiful or so unnervingly alive. For 3 hours, I walked. I sent distress signals on every frequency. Nothing. The planet's magnetosphere was a chaotic storm of interference, chewing up my transmissions like a wolf tearing through meat. I was alone, or so I thought. I found a stream of water that tasted like liquid starlight, pure, cold, and energizing. I patched my wounds with Medifoam and kept moving toward a distant heat signature my suit's sensors had picked up. A cluster of structures, geometric and deliberate, nestled in a valley between 2 glass tree forests. I crested a ridge and saw it. A city, but not one built by any species I knew. The buildings were spirals of white stone, intertwined with living vines that glowed with the same bioluminescence as the trees. There were no sharp angles, only curves and domes and open archways that seemed to breathe with the wind. And then I saw them. Women, dozens of them, moving between the structures in flowing robes of silver and green. They were tall, every single one of them over 6 feet, with leans, muscular builds that spoke of a society that valued endurance over brute force. Their skin ranged from pale jade to deep amber, and their hair was twisted into intricate braids woven with small, glowing crystals. I did the stupid thing. I stepped out from behind the rock and raised my hand in a universal gesture of peace. "Hello," I called out, my voice cracking from thirst and fear. "I am a traveler. I crashed. I need help." The nearest woman turned. Her eyes were the color of molten gold, and they widened with an expression I couldn't immediately read. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hostility. It was something far more unsettling. Recognition, not of me as an individual, but of me as a category. She opened her mouth and let out a sound that was half chant, half shriek, and the entire city went silent. Then they came for me. Not with weapons, with nets made of that same glowing vine. I thought, of course, I am a trained pilot and a decent hand-to-hand combatant. But there were too many, and they moved with a fluid coordination that felt almost psychic. Within seconds, I was wrapped in the vines, which tightened gently but inexorably every time I struggled. I was carried like a prized hunt through the streets of their city. Women of all ages, or what I assumed were ages. Since their features were so uniformly healthy and strong, lining the pathways to stare at me. Some touched my face with reverence. Others wept. A few laughed with a joy so pure it was almost manic. I was taken to the largest spiral building at the city's heart. Inside, the air was heavy with incense and the scent of the same ozone lavender from the atmosphere. They laid me on a slab of polished obsidian and removed the vines. I tried to bolt, but 4 of them held my arms and legs with effortless strength. A 5th woman entered. She was older, her braids streaked with silver, and she wore a headdress of woven crystal that cast rainbows across the walls. Her voice was low and musical, and when she spoke, a small device around her throat translated. "You are a males," she said. Not a question. "Last I checked," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. She smiled. It was a kind smile, which somehow made it worse. "Then you are the answer to a prayer we stopped praying 100 generations ago. Welcome, little ones. You are the trophy of the Matriarchy of Solace, and you will never leave." Middle, my name, I learned, was not important to them. They called me Veth-ur, which translated roughly to the remembered seed. For the first week, I was treated less like a prisoner and more like a sacred object. They fed me fruits that melted on my tongue like honeyed clouds, and a protein paste that tasted of roasted nuts. They bathed me in pools of warm, mineral-rich water while chanting soft hymns. They dressed me in robes of silk like fabric, so fine it felt like wearing nothing at all. But I was never alone. At least 2 of them watched me at all times. Their golden eyes filled with a disconcerting blend of scientific curiosity and something deeper. Hungrier. It was the matriarch, the silver-haired woman named Seraphine, who finally explained my situation over a meal of roasted root vegetables and some kind of flaky fish. The translation device hummed as she spoke. 700 years ago, she began, a plague swept our world. It was not a sickness of the body, but of the chromosomes, a targeted mutagen designed by our enemies in an ancient war. It made every male child stillborn. Within 2 generations, the last of our men died. Since then, we have reproduced through parthenogenesis daughters from our own bodies, clones of ourselves, but without the male genomes. We are fading. Our lifespans have halved. Our immune systems are brittle. We are a river that has been cut off from its source, and we are slowly turning to dust. I swallowed a bite of the fish, which tasted like regret. "So what do you want from me?" "I am one, guys. I can repopulate a planet." Seraphine's smile never wavered. "You underestimate the power of stored genetic material, Veth-ur, and you underestimate our science. We do not need you to repopulate in the crude sense. We need your DNAs, your Y chromosome, your unique epigenetic markers. We have preserved samples from our last males, but they are degraded, fragmented. You are a living, breathing tea. With your genetic material, we can engineer a new generation of males. A new beginnings." I tried to reason with her. I told her about Earths, about the human confederation, about the fact that I had a family, a mother and a father and a sister who was getting married next spring. I told them that if they let me go, I could bring back a diplomatic mission, a trade agreement, real help. Seraphine listened patiently, then shook her head. "Your ship is a wreck. Your distress signals cannot penetrate our magnetosphere. Even if they could, your people are light years away. You are ours now, and in time, you will not want to leave." She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Her palm was warm and calloused. "We have not held a male in 3 centuries. Jax Cordell, you are not a prisoner. You are a miracle." That was the word they used most often. Miracle. But miracles don't usually have guards posted outside their doors. I spent the next month learning their language, their customs, and their layouts. The city was called Val Ammer, and it housed roughly 5,000 women. They had no prisons because they had no crime. They had no armies because they had no enemies. Their war ended centuries ago, and they had turned their technology inward, toward healing and cultivation. In many ways, it was a paradise. Clean air, abundant food, art, music, and a communal love so fierce it felt like a physical force. But there was a shadow beneath the beauty. I noticed it in the way the younger women looked at me, not with joy, but with a desperate, aching loneliness that made my skin crawl. I noticed it in the way Seraphine subtly steered every conversation back to my genetic material, asking about my health, my sleep, my stress levels. And I noticed it in the locked door at the end of the eastern corridor of the spiral tower, the one guarded by two women who carried not nets, but actual spears tipped with obsidian. One night, I feigned illness. I curled up on my sleeping mat. They had given me a room of my own, though it had no lock, and moaned softly until the guard outside came to check on me. She was a young woman named Alara, barely 20 by my estimation, with kind eyes and a nervous habit of twisting her braids. When she leaned over me, I apologized and hit her with a pressure point strike I'd learned in survival training. She crumpled without a sound. I dragged her into the room, took her spear and her key card, and slipped out. The eastern corridor was dark. The bioluminescent vines dimmed for the night cycle. The two spear-wielding guards saw me coming and raised their weapons. I didn't want to hurt them, so I did something else. I dropped the spear, raised my hands, and spoke in their language as best I could. I am not your enemies. I just want to see what you're hiding. They exchanged a glance. Then, to my shock, they stepped aside. One of them, an older woman with a scar across her cheek, said, "The Matriarch said you would come eventually. Go, see, and then you will understand." The door opened onto a staircase that spiraled down into the earth. I followed it for what felt like 10 minutes, the air growing colder and damper with every step. At the bottom was a chamber lit by a single, pulsating crystal, and in the center of the chamber, suspended in a tube of clear fluid, was a body, a male body. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with features that could have been carved from marble. His eyes were closed, and his hands were folded across his chest. He looked peaceful. He also looked exactly like me. No, not exactly. The bone structure was slightly different, the hair a shade lighter, but the resemblance was unmistakable. He was a human male, and according to the runes carved into the base of the tube, his name was Valen, and he had crashed on this planet 400 years ago. Ending. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the ghost of my predecessor. My mind refused to connect the dots, so my body took over. I pressed my palm against the cold glass of the tube and read the rest of the inscription. The Matriarchy had found Valen, just as they had found me. They had treated him as a trophy, a sacred seed, a miracle, and they had taken his genetic material willingly at first. Then less so. The runes didn't say how he died. They only said that he was preserved in gratitude and sorrow. I heard footsteps behind me. Seraphine descended the final stair, her silver braids loose around her shoulders, her golden eyes soft with an emotion I could finally name. "Grief. You were going to do the same to me," I said. It wasn't a question. She stopped a few feet away and folded her hands in front of her. "We were going to ask you. We hoped you would say yes." Valen did. For a time, he was a poet. He wrote songs for us, taught us games, helped us refine our gene splicing techniques. But the lonely ones among us, they wanted more than his science. They wanted his touch, his warmth, his voice in the dark. He gave what he could, but a single heart cannot feed 5,000 hungry souls. He withered, not from any cruelty of ours, from the weight of being wanted. I turned back to the tube. Valen's face was serene, but I noticed now the faint lines around his mouth, the slight hollowing of his cheeks. He had been tired. So tired. What happens to me now? I asked. Seraphine stepped up beside me and placed her hand on the glass next to mine. That depends on you. Jax Cordell. We have changed in 4 centuries. Valen's sacrifice taught us that a trophy is still a living thing. We have developed synthetic wombs, advanced gene editing, the ability to propagate your genome without ever touching you. If that is your wish, you can live among us as a teacher, a friend, a storyteller. You can have your own quarters, your own work, your own purpose, or you can refuse everything. You can sit in that room and grow old and bitter. And we will still care for you because you are the last of your kind here. I looked at her for a long time. Then I looked at Valen's. Then I looked at my own hands bruised, scarred, but still mine. I want to see your gene lab, I said. And I want to send one more distress signal. Not for rescue, just to let my family know I am alive. Can you boost my transmitter through the magnetosphere? Seraphine's smile was no longer kind. It was triumphant. But I didn't mind. Because I had made a choice. I wasn't a trophy. I was a bridge. Over the following months, I gave them samples of blood, skin, and hair. I watched as their scientists wept with joy when they successfully recombined my Y chromosome with their preserved ova. I watched as the first male child in 7 centuries was born a squalling, red-faced infant with his mother's golden eyes and his father's my stubborn chin. They named him Jax, after me. And when he grows up, he will not be alone, because I have also been teaching them something Valen never thought to teach. How to build a ship, how to navigate the stars, how to find Earths. One day, I will go home, but not yet, because out here, on this forgotten world of glass trees and lavender air, I have found something I never expected. Not freedom, not love, exactly, but a purpose. I am the trophy of the Matriarchy of Solace, and for the first time since I crashed, that doesn't sound like a prison sentence. It sounds like a beginning.